What is up, folks? Casual Dad here. We're in the tail end of week 3 for the latter season, and it's just, it's my favorite time of the season to play because it's still week 3, so you're starting to climb up into Terra and really find that more players are getting there too. So games are getting more challenging, but they're not quite the totally overwhelming get your butt kicked of the final week and especially final weekend. So it takes a little while to get there, both in terms of time and then time just playing. But it's my absolute favorite time to play because that's when you really start hitting the moment where games are competitive. You're kind of seeing the meta, but it's not totally overwhelming. So you can still have a decent win rate, still progress pretty aggressively, but not go up against decks that you're like dramatically more powerful than. So we're going to go ahead and open this pack, and then we're just going to play some games. Oh, that was a good pack. Nice. Okay, then we'll start that timer as early as possible. So checking at this. Last time I talked about what I was going to do for this season, I said I was going to go ahead and ladder with Votan. I ended up not doing that just because I wanted to level with Warspeaky, the one that shuts down opposing abilities, and my Votan cards are at a decent level, but my warlords are level 1 and 2, so that's just too low. If you're playing a competitive game, your warlord's going to hit the board, and I was just losing every time that happened, even in early games, so I'll have to shelve that for now. But so we're doing Orcs, we're doing Tyranids, Chaos, and Eldari. For Orcs so far, it's mostly been Zagstruck. They're my lowest. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and do that. Let's do it. Got my cards at a scary level, and Zagstruck's kind of benefited from the double traits, but then also the meta has shifted a little bit, so a lot of Zagstruck's worst counters just aren't appearing as much. Yeah, this should be a cakewalk. So he is rated higher than me. Awesome. So I'll get a nice chunk of progression here. So we're going to lead with this guy. Ooh, look at that. So you can click on that to see both of their abilities. That first ability, of course, is going to be overwritten because of Zagstruck's ability, where when a card readies, it does a melee attack at full attack value. We're going to cruise here, so I'll go ahead and polish that guy off. Ooh, that's not a good. Didn't want to play that guy early, but he was my best drop. The other utility pieces aren't going to be needed yet. Alright, so just to restate it, Zagstruck's ability is anytime one of your cards readies, it instead does a melee attack at its full melee attack value, which hits really, really hard, so I should actually get a board wipe without even firing a shot. Almost, not quite. That guy's melee is a little lower than I thought. But his range is really high, so I'll get that guy on the flip side. I'm waiting for... Okay, there it is. This is a Tolmaron deck, so you're going to get at least one heavy-hitting card coming in, especially because it's rated decently highly and then also had a small deck. So I did a board wipe, and then he only had a small number of cards left. So that's pretty quickly going to take out my War Boss, but then I still have 6 cards in my deck, including Zagstruck himself. And all I need to do is take down one of these guys, so I can pull Tolmaron and then finish him off. So he's probably not going to wipe me yet. Nah, it's all good. So I'm going to talk about these a little bit. I'll try to do some actual commentary. I know I was a little bit late on it in this particular game. Just to sort of talk through what I expect in each of these games and then kind of review as it goes. Ooh, how are we going to do this? Let's do that. So I want to take out the big plane on the right, but it's got enough hit points I'm not entirely sure I'll be able to bring it down, where this guy should be relatively easy. Yeah, sweet. So I may even take out both these guys. No, not quite, but close. And I still have 4 cards in the deck, so that sets me up well. This guy's going to go down to shooting. Was that enough? No. Okay, so this guy will live, if barely. Ooh, no, he won't. Ooh, there's my board wipe. But easy solution. But and I put him down because his area effect ability is going to take out this injured card, but this guy will too. And then, because it's basically endgame, we can go ahead and do this. And then I think I've even got him just... Yeah, I've totally got him here. Zagstruck by himself could take that out, but... Go with the buddies. So there we go. 1 win. Not too bad, not too bad. I'll check the rotation here. I'm going to try to rotate the games to keep this a little bit fresher. I'm planning to play quite a few games fairly quickly, just to kind of pack it in here, so it's not, so I don't bore you guys. We'll see here. Alright, and then we're going to check to see if that got us over the hump. It did not, so we got to do at least one more game with orcs. I'm going to mix it up, so that was my Zagstruck deck. I'm also going to go ahead and show my... Ooh, nice. Mozrog deck. This has gone through a couple different iterations. This is still kind of my favorite one. Key piece about Mozrog, again, his ability whenever your cards do a melee attack, whether it's your turn or not, they heal for a percentage of their starting health, which is fantastic for keeping your cards alive, and especially good for your cards that have Berserk, that build up their attack damage over time, because they just get completely insane. But one key thing I really need to remember about this deck is that no matter how tough your healing cards are, they will start dying, and so you do need to mix in other cards to keep them alive, and things that kind of help you progress in the game, because otherwise you're going to be burned down. So note there, I didn't have the drop, but I wouldn't want to drop only my really beefy cards on the opening. The reason being that you still want to shuffle your tough cards around, because there will be times where they get low on health. Hopefully they don't die outright, but there will be times where they get low on health where you're going to want to kind of pull them back a bit. We got a pretty gnarly deck over here. So I'm deliberately putting some cards in here that will die a little bit. And I don't want to do that too soon. So we'll get both of these guys out here. Oh yeah. And these are the two I've got that are best leveled. There are some other cards to put in here. There's the War Boss riding the red thing. Is one of the best cards you can ever put in a Mozrog deck, but mine is low level, so he doesn't compete with these guys. I think he's only got Berserk level 1. Maybe 2, because he is legendary, so I think he starts at rank 2. So here's where it's getting tricky. So he's doing a bunch of damage. So we're going to go ahead and drop our taunt. So you want to kind of sprinkle in your taunts and your heals so that they have the most possible impact, so they keep your big heavy hitters alive to get to the end game. And this was a great moment because I did some serious damage there. But and all the cards, this is a weird Zephyrblade deck, because Zephyrblade usually is all ranged. This one is mixing in melee, which is interesting. But he's also been kind of medium cost cards, so most of the cards I've seen are going to be filling up the deck. So it's a fairly large deck with a bunch of melee cards and nothing really cheap. So the stuff I'm going to see in there is not terribly dangerous, but that last card, that last bodyguard, probably is going to be something scary. It's not going to be enough. This should be a relatively easy win. It's probably a really fun deck to play. It's a nice mixed take on the usual Zephyrblade deck that's just all ranged. It's a little bit more flexible. Not rated all that highly, so maybe that's just how he's progressing. I don't know. Maybe he's just trying stuff. A lot of the time when you see a deck like this one, it's probably not a player's top deck. It's just a deck that they like to play, and they may be playing... Ooh, weird. So it is really just melee. So he's playing this as a heavy melee deck, using some cheaper cards, but also using Zephyrblade because Zephyrblade is the cheapest Eldar Warlord, not because of his ability. So this is a pretty easy one, and then we should be able to switch to another faction. Just to play around a bit. And these guys get a little bit silly by the end game. Like, this guy's melee is just completely nuts. And that may kill me. Not quite. Cool. Okay. Yeah, and you see they're still sitting on a bunch of health, and then also... Oh, that's a note. So the regen happens after Deathblow. So you want to be careful doing the math on that in the middle of a competitive game. So your card doesn't die before it does the healing from Mozrog's ability. But yeah, so Mozrog is insanely powerful and gets just exponentially more powerful as you level up your cards. But you do need to be careful with it, because there are some things that can take it down, especially being overwhelmed just by large decks. Let's see, we're doing pretty well, so we're going to get weird here real quick, and we're going to play a different Warlord while we can. That's one of the things kind of earlier in the season I like to do, is play with my off-meta Warlords. Where are you, buddy? Just kind of muck it around and get to the point where one day they may be one of your upper tier decks. This is an interesting one. So it's the Wartsnega guy whose cards get a flat buff to all of their stats for every less than 10 point card that dies. Ooh, Artemis. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of good. So you put your cheap cards out first, you let them do some damage and get some kills, and then they... Let's see what else you got. And then them dying gives you flat bonuses to all your cards. Alright, and this is pretty weird. I really like this deck, but it's low level. My Wartsnagger himself is very low level. And then most of the cards in it are kind of weird psychic cards that really don't hit their stride until they're much higher level than mine are. So there we got some of those bonuses coming into effect. But one thing to note is that the under 10 cost cards in Orcs are really pretty good. They actually do quite a bit more than they get credit for a lot of the time. So it's not even really a waste playing them early, and it does beef up your later cards. This still is going to be a challenging matchup because it is Artemis, and he's got a pretty big deck. So he's got it's deep. There are a lot of cards in there that I have to worry about. This guy is an example of a card that's really, really, really good at high level, but as you can see, mine's still kind of middling. So he's got that rank 2 trait, not rank 3. Still very good, but definitely not what he's going to be. So I built this deck kind of to prepare for all these cards to be higher level when it'll really, really slap. So he's just over here doing whatever kind of attack type he feels like. And here's where it gets a little scary. Go ahead and do this. I'm holding back, and this is a challenging one. I really like Wartsnagger, but one of the biggest challenges with him is you have to be really careful keeping your cards alive. Ooh, nice. Look at that. Because Wartsnagger himself is really fragile and vulnerable, and that's how you lose these games, and that's how you fight against these decks, is by pulling him and then taking him out and just kind of ignoring everything on the way. Because the way these decks work, half of the deck is built to die. So you just be like, alright, you want to? Go ahead. Let's see what else we got here. And yeah, that guy, once he gets a higher level Berserk, he's going to be a real scary contender. Do we do it? Yeah, we're going to do it. I'm going to take a bit of a beating here. But I will take out the Inspire guy and still have some health left on my Psychic guy in the end here. But Wartsnagger himself is going to hit the board, so I'll probably lose this, especially if... No, okay. So he's not high level enough to have that target acquired. Ooh. So there's that, but still. Ooh, that was a little rough. Yeah, but this isn't the end of things. So he has to move, well, Calgar himself over here, and I'll see if I have any ability, any attack type that's enough to kill him. I think I might if I shoot him. And if I can kill Calgar, I can, yes. And he doesn't have the, and I'm looking at ranged 3, big game hunter. Okay, so I'm not going to do the math here. I'm going to go ahead and risk it. I'm going to do Psychic, which will do the melee debuff, because the most dangerous thing for me is if he hits me in melee with both of these. I don't think they can kill me even if they do. Do we do it? Extra 60%, that's half again. Plus change. Half is 70, yeah, that should be good. Fingers crossed. Sweet. Okay, so I've got this in the bag, so that was lucky. I'm probably not going to play Wartsnagger anymore because I am trying to progress and I don't want to lose too many of these games, but that was a very satisfying game. It's just he's a really interesting warlord with a really cool ability, so it's kind of fun to play around with. And he's one of those ones that you can't play later in the season because he's in a faction you're actively laddering with, so he's highly rated, and so you end up with tough matchups. But yeah, that you just want to experiment with. And I don't like playing casual either, so I tend to kind of mix those guys in early in the season and then switch them out later when things get a little tougher. So we're going to do one more game with Zagstruck, and then I'll switch factions. Promise I will be mixing this up a little bit more. And talking a little bit more about my opposing decks. So the last one with Artemis. Artemises are hard to predict because it's usually going to be a full deck of just something. And Artemis is good with any combination of cards in the Space Marine field, so it could be anything, which makes him especially fun to play against, but also especially challenging because he's very hard to predict. Tolmaron, it's going to be a shooting deck, probably a fair number of things that are not very scary, and then a couple things in there that are really scary. This is a full-size Tolmaron deck with 8 bodyguards. So this one may actually be a little bit more dangerous than some of the others. Okay, so far that's 2 reasonably expensive cards that aren't particularly scary, so... also, the AI Tolmaron is not reflective of what human players would do with Tolmaron, because the AI will play the cheaper cards first, where with a Tolmaron you probably want to actually play some of your more expensive cards first. You'll note that I just killed that before it's even my turn. That's the beauty of Zagstruck. And we'll probably have we got a board wipe. Played a taunt card and we got a board wipe because I played my heavy hitters. That's the thing about Zagstruck. He's all about momentum. You want to hit hard and fast because he does kind of fold a little bit to continued pressure. So if I see a Urian Rakarth, the healing Dark Eldar Warlord, that's definitely a problem with the Zagstruck decks because they can just become tougher and tougher as you get deeper and deeper. So you run out of steam. Sometimes you run out of steam before they run out of cards. This is a weird one. So he's got 2 bodyguards left. I'm expecting them to be big. Okay, but because the cards I've already seen are kind of medium cost, there's not that much room for them to be anything terribly scary. So he's going to have 1 plane that will play with Tolmaron himself, so that was another relatively easy matchup. I am a lot higher rated than this deck, though, so it should be an easy one. And should be a pretty quick one to go through. And when I'm saying medium cost, I mean, like, usually with a Tolmaron deck, it's very top-heavy. You have a couple cards that are, like, in the 50-plus points range, and then most of the other cards are kind of floating around, like, 10 or under. Maybe 15 or under. So if you're getting consistently over 15 into the 20s with the cost of those cards, it's definitely going to not punch as hard as some of the other Tolmaron decks. If you run into a Tolmaron deck that has, like, 4 bodyguards, those are the ones you actually really, really need to worry about in a lot of cases because they punch incredibly hard and quickly, and the AI has no choice but to play them kind of the most aggressive possible way. Okay, so that was a good little spade with orcs. Let's go ahead and muck around here. Next up is going to be Tyranids. My goal is going to be to get all of these to roughly 3k. Probably a little bit over. I'm probably not going to push for the top 6% this season. Sorry, what was that? Those are Tyranid, yeah. So I'm going to show off this Tervagon deck. This is one I've looked at before. No, you know what? We're going to Parasite first. So the Parasite got that buff this season. I've been playing it up to this point, but I'm not sure how it's going to compete at higher level. It's not going to be one of the strongest warlords, but it's certainly better. And just like Wartsnaga, it's one that I really enjoy playing just because it's, it's fun. It's weird, it's different. But it is one where the Parasite itself really has to be pretty high level. And that's a place where the deck really, really struggles if yours is not. And for me, one of the key things here is the Parasite has to hit really, really, really hard. So let's see if we called this right. So that Furious Charge infests that, and then this melee attack is going to... Oh, it's his turn. Melee debuff. Nasty. Debuff. But this should be a comfortable... Oh, look. Ooh, mask. Yeah, always forget that. You don't see the mask very often, so it's kind of a cool warlord to run into. Anytime a card is glowing, it's above the hit point threshold where it makes attacks first. So if you shoot at a mask deck, it will shoot you back before you can attack. And depending, of course, on... okay. Depending, of course, on whether it has the correct attack stat, and... It's a little early for that guy. Wow, okay. Who does the least melee? So why I'm agonizing here is all of these cards are infected. I'm probably going to kill all of them. Where I was really hoping, what you want with this is when a card blows up, you want it to have the most possible impact. So that's a wipe. So now I have to reinfect the next line and kind of start over. Where it's nice to keep one card on there that's higher health than the others, so you can have that blow up on the next wave. Okay, but the taunt worked out pretty well. Wow, that's a nasty bunch of stuff. I'm doing pretty well. I still think I've got this pretty much in the bag, but it could turn any time. I still have 5 bodyguards in the deck and decent health in all of these. And these guys are not leveled to the point where their melee is particularly scary. Nice. And that will pull the mask itself. And this dude's already infested. Which is... No, he's not. Okay. Darn. Yeah, it's okay. And what's your melee damage? 58. Okay, so looking at mask, he's at full health. If I attack him, he'll attack me first. So I want to keep him over here because this guy has the melee to outright kill my Death Leaper before it attacks. And we're going to go ahead and hedge our bets. Make sure to poison that warlord to make sure we have every edge possible to take him down. So everyone's infested. Dun, dun, dun. And Death Blow does count as a melee attack, so that does also trigger your infested ability. Do that. Ooh, yeah, we'll do that. And once a card is infested, it doesn't matter how it dies. It will then explode on neighboring cards, so that's why I've got a couple poison cards in here. And I do have several of the big death blows. Splat. And then we got a cascade. So that actually killed all of them. So that's what you want, is to set up those cascades where a really big card dies on cards that are already infested and it kind of rolls through and gets a board wipe. So yeah, that was a cool one. That is a game I was actually a little concerned about once I realized who I was up against. We're going to do one more with the Parasite, just to give it a try. And then I'll go ahead and show off the Turvagon deck I've been doing, and then we will switch factions. I just really enjoy playing the Parasite because it's relatively new and it's different. It's a very cool warlord to play with just to kind of make it work. And just got the big buff for this season. The buff being, whenever you attack a card and hit it with the Infect, it does reduce damage. In the past, the card would deal 40% of its base damage, now it does 60%. So your initial melee attack does 20% more damage than it used to, which is great. But already, these cards were these... Ooh, I'll bet there are going to be some nasty psychers in there. I'm going to regret that. I don't know what I was saying. Already these cards are... Already there was definitely something to the Parasite. It was a fairly competitive deck, just no one was really trying it because it is tricky to figure out and you do need some very heavily leveled cards and to play some pretty weird strategies in-game. So I totally get why it was a little bit behind, but it's pretty cool, and I'm glad to see it doing as well as it now should be. So again, hitting really hard. You don't want to play all of your heavy hitters early, but I'm going to go ahead and try this. One of the great things about the Parasite is, done best, it is a counter to Akaran, just because, especially with poison, it's just multiple ways where you can do multiple levels of damage, so you can easily finish off injured cards. Like the guy in the middle should die. Nope. Okay. But that's a bit of a bummer, is that I'm going to do another wipe. So we'll do this. He's probably going to hit me real hard next. So does his thing, dies, and then cascade back. So if they were not poisoned, that would be a perfect example of how the Parasite does a great job with dealing with Akaran. Okay, cool. So this is a melee Akaran, and there are some melee Akaran decks out there that are really scary. And this is, it's not a bad Akaran deck, it's just a little bit low level. And that right there is why you put that Deathblow guy in when you're about to get hit yourself. Now let's see, I'm going to go ahead and drop my taunt. Because this is a turn where, oh, they're already infected, that's right. But still, so I need to kill one of these guys to bring Akaran himself on the board, and I want to do that when I still have a decent attack line. So if I can kill 2 of these guys and keep something scary in the wing, that would be great. And we'll see if that's possible. And it is. Thing of beauty. So I think I can... Yeah, okay. So we're going to do target acquired, and this should give me a board wipe. If I can do lethal on that guy, which, yeah, definitely. Splat, splat, poof, poof. Boom. Oh, thing of beauty. So if you are really struggling with Acheron and you have decently leveled Tyranids, try the Parasite, because that is very satisfying. This is a pretty low-leveled Acheron, so it's definitely not going to go this well every time, but still. And after this, I will switch to the Tervagon, because the Tervagon is a much more competitive, scary deck. And I don't know if it's going to get me as highly in the ladder as it has in the past. But, yeah. Splat, very satisfying. Okay. Next game, Tervagon. But, so, I just wanted to show, this is one of the more fun times to play, because the decks you're seeing are somewhat competitive. The ones I've been seeing so far have been rated quite a bit lower than me, so that's maybe not the best time to bring that up, but they're there. So we're going to do the Tervagon. But so you're still progressing, and you have a pretty consistent win rate. So I haven't lost yet, even playing some of my off-meta warlords. Okay, so in the past, when I've run the Tervagon, it's got the free ability where you get the free card. So I've, for whatever reason, usually run a full deck to try to just have this really dense thing that takes a long time to chew through. The thing is, then you compromise on the cost of the cards you put in, so you don't include the more expensive cards, and then also a lot of the cards you have in there become a liability because they're very squishy and just die quickly without doing anything. Also, if you have a full deck, you're less likely to always have the option to pull the Termagant. So I asked for recommendations because I was struggling with the Tervagon deck this season, and someone on the Warhammer Combat Cards Discord recommended this deck, which has been fantastic. Really been loving it, and it's really helped kind of get me through. It's always a little bit of a challenge, kind of like getting past that. You look at a deck that only has 4 bodyguards, and you're like, ooh, that's going to be rough. The only faction I know of that kind of consistently does that and really succeeds is Necrons, because they've got just such beefy bodyguards with really high stats. But in this, you're almost guaranteed to always have the option to play one of your Termagants. You don't have to, but you can. And having that option is really huge, because then you get the absolute maximum benefit. You play the most possible Termagants and block the most possible damage to your cards. So this deck has proven to be very effective, and I've really enjoyed playing it. Just because the Scourge of Seranus is one of the best cards in the game, so having a Tervagon deck with that, plus the 2 best shooting cards in Necrons, and then also on top of that, getting the most benefit from this guy, is fantastic. Feels a little bit like cheating, but it's a really powerful way to build this deck. And I should comfortably win this one. And I should comfortably win this one because he's only rated just under 2k. Or this deck is only rated just under 2k. And that's the thing to remember, is even when you're playing against these decks, don't judge the players because you don't know whether it's their kind of primary deck or not. And also don't judge the players just because don't judge the players. But important thing to keep in mind, I have decks that are rated around like 400 because the last time I played them, they were really scrubs and I did barely anything with them. And also we all have factions we just don't play very much. Woo! But also, if you don't play all that much, even if you have a very successful, very potent deck, it could sit kind of at lower trophy level, just because. Alright, now here we're going to drop this guy. And the tip I was given was to keep the Crone back and not play it early. But I went ahead and played it early because I want to really shave some damage off this guy as early as possible. For a variety of reasons. But yeah, so you're seeing that constant damage output. The Scourge of Seranus is doing that area effect attack, and then also the Termagants are just putting out that constant stream of damage. And here I need to be careful. So it's very tempting to drop a Termagant anywhere here or here. If I do that, that'll automatically trigger the taunt from Nemesaur. So I'm going to do this and this. Because I really want to kill that before pulling Nemesaur out of the box. So we're going to ready. because I don't have enough range damage to actually kill that thing, and I'm not really concerned about dying yet. Ah, bummer. Okay. Which, of course, he was going to go ahead and do that. So now I don't have to worry as much about triggering the Varguard because he's already here. And so, let's make some magic. Yeah. So this guy doesn't even have the shielded Varguard, but that shielded Varguard now is just crazy. So this is a very intimidating, very successful deck. It's just a fairly low-level version. Probably going to go melee, and so I've got my melee hitter there. Yeah. And we got it. Gonna play some of my more competitive decks in a minute. We'll see if we can get you a game that really kind of makes me sweat. That Artemis deck was close. That did worry me a little bit. I'm gonna do one more with the Tervigon, and then we're gonna switch factions again. One thing I really want to show off is my Chaos deck. Because Chaos is a faction I'm always just right in the edge of being my best. Ooh, there we go, 2.4k. Chaos is always right at the edge of being my most competitive faction. It's one that I really, really enjoy playing. Just got a lot of variety and really interesting stuff, but always falls just a little bit short. But the deck I'm working on now, I'm curious to see how high it goes this season. And now you see I'm playing the Gargoyles early, mostly just to kind of tease out what's going to be what's going to show up, because you don't really know early on. So looking at that, we've got a healer, we've got a taunt card. It's a small deck, so I'm probably going to see either Tigurius and Njal, or Njal and the Dreadnought. My personal favorite way to play Voldus is with the Dreadnought, the Blood Angel Psychic Dreadnought, because that thing just gets silly. With the Voldus' passive ability of just providing the psychic buffs. So you keep it alive with the taunts and the medicays, and then just build that thing up to obscene levels. And it's got the area effect attack, so it just makes a royal mess across the whole board. He does 40, okay. Bloop. But that is going to be a bit of a challenge, because those take a while to go through. But the AI, of course, played backwards and played the cheaper cards first. So... But that by no means that this is going to be an easy game, because those were kind of the scrub cards, and the really scary stuff is still coming. Alright, more taunt. That one's an interesting choice in this. I think there are probably cheaper cards you want to include instead. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Just because it does limit what kind of bodyguards you're able to bring when you're bringing a 21-point card that's there just to taunt. Although, that was a significant ranged attack. I didn't expect that either, so that's not bad. I'm going to go ahead and go here, because he doesn't have a ranged attack. And then we're going to go... That may not be the right choice. Another thing to really watch with the Tervigon is you do not want to play your Termagant somewhere it's not going to die, because you don't get to respawn it, and it's just stuck, and suddenly you lose every advantage of being the Tervigon. So I want to pop this guy back in here somewhere where he's definitely going to die. I may regret that, but we're going to do it. And you want it to keep dying because it does its most when it's redeploying and getting that free damage pretty frequently. Ooh, rough. Getting that in here. How many shields you got? I got one. And now you can see that my Crone is getting a little squishy over here. So I probably am going to end up having to play... Ooh, man. Play the Tervigon itself. Ooh, that was close. I got lucky there. If these guys were just a little bit higher level, or that's if the AI had played them earlier, that would have been a real problem. I only had that 5 health there, so if this guy had just one more card played after him, or if he had, one more level of Inspire, then I would have lost both of my cards, and that would have left me open to one of these dudes hitting me from a flank, and that would have made this a much closer game. As it is, this should be pretty comfortable. There we go. Death by 1,000 cards, blah. Yeah, and that was a trick. I just switched the deployment so this guy can finish that guy off. If it was a closer game, that would have mattered. I'm just kind of practicing to keep myself sharp for these. So I do this. I jumped in this recording saying this is my favorite time to ladder because you get competitive games, and you do at this point in the week. I probably just didn't hit it hard enough earlier in the week, so I'm rated a little bit lower than I normally am at this point. So we got Tyranids. Let's do some Eldari. Now, one deck I always love to show off is Leela. Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm not even going to show Chaos. Yes, I am. We'll do Chaos. Okay. And then we'll finish with Eldari. But the deck, so usually I play Skulltaker because he's kind of my favorite Chaos card, Warlord. I did last season play a fair amount of, where are you, buddy? Abaddon? Just because he was very effective for me because his stats himself, he's just a very good endgame piece. I personally think the best Chaos Warlord is, I mean, the Mask is pretty good, but Huron. Huron is absolutely incredible, especially if you get really high-level Fear cards, and especially if you get those Slanesh cards in there. He really makes a huge impact and is probably the best Chaos Warlord. But the one that always surprises me is Gloggothrox himself. And this is the deck that I put together to beat Guilliman, Roboot Guilliman, in a campaign a couple videos ago. And that was a really challenging fight that I almost never beat. I do not beat Guilliman. So I really wanted to try this in ladder, and it's been really effective. It's heavy on the poison, uses some of my favorite cards, and finally has a home in a functional, useful way for both my Plague Drone and my Heldrick. Two cards that I've always seen as really powerful that just never really landed right. And this deck has been really, really, really good. It's been my most effective Chaos deck so far, and the AI thinks it's good too, so it just put me against a 2.9k. So hey, let's see how it goes. This could be a good matchup or it could be a bad matchup depending on what cards they've got in there. Which is always true, but it's a Badruk deck, so we really don't know. Perfect. So I went ahead and dropped the Nurglings because I saw it's a small deck, doesn't have a ton of cards, not very deep, and he's going to have some heavy hitters in there, so I figured at least one of the cards in the opening board would be a pretty heavy hitter. And it was, and that's perfect. A thing to remember really quick here with Gloggothrox is that his ability, the attack debuff triggers after Badruk's shots. So if you're counting on the debuff saving some of your injured cards, don't. That's important to remember. And that was really good. It's also good to trigger melee against Badruk because that will finish off your injured cards in some cases and prevent him from getting the chain range shots that he will get otherwise. So this guy already, like, he's hitting real hard, but he's so we got poison on that. So again, we're doing melee to deliberately kind of finish off some injured cards so that they don't trigger the chain shots later. Perfect. And now I'm going to lose this. So the trick to this deck is not to give up your... let's see here. Is not to give up your cards too quickly. So you got to kind of stagger it. You want to put your heavy-hitting attack cards in here, but not all at once, and you don't want to put all of your weak cards in at once either, especially against Badruk, because you want your... Oh, gross. So I think I might have messed this up. Okay, not yet, but that's not good. So I should have kind of seen that coming, because that was going to hit really hard. These guys are crazy, crazy powerful. So let's see, who has the biggest melee hit? He does. Okay, so if I want to finish off this card in melee so it doesn't... so it doesn't chain the attacks on me, that's what I'm going to have to do. God, this thing is so absurd. So I may still lose this. I don't think I played it well, but we'll see, because I'm doing okay. And even if I get board wiped, there's the advantage that that then will seriously reduce the... Oh man, that was lucky. God, I hate that thing. It'll seriously reduce the damage output from my last few cards. Because this guy got some kills, he's already hitting a lot less, and that saved this card here. Because he normally should have died because of the volume of attack he was taking. And then let's see, I want want to do this. Now what I'm thinking here is I'm going to poison the Squig Buggy. I will do enough melee to kill the guy on the left. This guy's got enough health to hold this guy down for a while. And that also finished off the Terminator so that this guy's hitting a lot less. So like that is not a scary card anymore. So I may have this, especially because I got 2 more debuffs on this guy. But it still is pretty iffy. And again, really pushing to kind of have this guy finish off my cards in melee. It's going to be close, but that's one of the things about Gloggothrox is the way it plays, you feel like you're losing the entire game until you win. And you just win by, like, your expectation in your mind is I'm going to take this much damage, and then you take so much less because of a combination of fear and his ability really having an impact overall. But I think he still got me because I do not have enough to deal 143. One thing about Badruk is I think that I've said this before, he's got every single possible advantage. His ability triggers first. There's no limit to how often it triggers. The bodyguards he has are incredibly good with his ability. But then Badruk himself has a lot of hit points. He still has a respectable melee attack. He's got a good attack himself. He's legendary, so he does get double attacks. How hard he's going to hit me in shooting. I'm going to attempt... No, he's going to shoot me. I don't have a debuff on that. So 115. Ah, so close. No, so I messed up kind of in the early play here, and that really cost me. So, as a player playing against Badruk, you have to play perfectly to beat him, even with a deck that's got a reasonably good matchup. Just because he can really bite you in the butt. And there are things like, even there, Gloggothrox's debuff ability should trigger before bonus shots. Like, there's no reason for Badruk's ability to trigger multiple times first. So you don't actually blunt the damage you're taking until it's done, which doesn't feel like it's in the intentional design of that matchup. Gloggothrox should be a really, really good matchup against Badruk, but he's not. Okay, so here we go. He's not because the debuff triggers after your hit. So you'll lose more cards than you should, kind of in theory. And again, just because Badruk has every possible advantage. Also, things like he will pretty much always hit first, because he just has really high initiative cards. Okay. So this is a relatively shallow Santa deck. What is your name? I gotta stop calling you Santa. Logan. Logan Grimnar. It's a relatively shallow Grimnar deck because it's got a lot of cards, but the first 3 I've seen are all cheap. And they're Medicae and Filler, so that when you see this Filler card, it means that the points were spent on something still in the deck. Bloop. So you want to watch out for that. And again, I'm kind of staggering my hard-hitting cards. I probably should have played the Plague Drone earlier. But yeah, in that Badruk game, I really, really messed up on that one board wipe where I ended up losing my Helldrake before it shot. That was bad. I should have put my shield guy against the really hard-hitting dude and kind of try to do some more damage before losing it. Because I was probably going to lose some of those cards, but I didn't have to lose all of them, and certainly not like that. Okay, so we want to poison you. Oh, it's his turn. Yeah, that was good. So, and then you kind of rotate your cards around to kind of add debuffs as you're playing, and then also kind of reduce the damage you take to keep your cards alive just a little bit longer. That's the thing about Gloggothrox. He's kind of a long play sort of deck. And this is weird. This is a Psychic Grimnar deck. I don't know what's going on here. That's also one thing to kind of keep in mind. I'm still thinking about that last game. I should not have lost that. Pretty sure that loss was something to do with my play, and I know I lost the Helldrake in the worst possible way, but there are just a couple other turns where I could have played a little bit better. And I'm still sort of mulling that over in my head. But one of the big things I kind of want to highlight there is that as you're playing this game, you could have the best cards and the most powerful deck out there. You still need to think a little bit about how it's played. You can't just go on autopilot. You do need... Let's see if that works. You do need a little strategy involved. Nice, okay. It's my turn, cool. So I knew he was coming in, I knew he was going to have Furious Charge, but I do have this guy over here. And now Logan may still actually kill my Helldrake. Yeah, he's got a lot of buffed up. Yeah, okay. And there too, oh, nice, because that was endless. Oh, that saved my butt. And there too, because I don't know why I said because. There too, you saw Logan's overflow damage ability triggered before the damage debuff. That makes sense. And with Furious Charge or Precision Shot, you'll see that the Furious Charge or Precision Shot fires, and then the damage is applied before the next follow-up attack. So that's kind of where I'm getting that thing that... and even with a Zagstruck deck, they're separate attacks. So if a card has both Furious Charge and Ready, then it will attack once, get the damage debuff, attack again, potentially get the damage debuff. So it doesn't just attack repeatedly without any kind of consequence. Badrock is the only case where you'll get multiple attacks without suffering from the damage debuff. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Yeah, Chaos is still at the bottom. We'll do one more. So I really like this deck. It's not a guaranteed win, but it's cool and interesting to play. It's very technical. It's like a very strategic kind of deck, which is unusual for Gloggothrox. I say that. It's unusual for the way I've ever played Gloggothrox before, but I've never really played Gloggothrox very effectively before. So I really, really enjoy this deck. We'll start with our poison cards a little earlier this time. Nice. Got a little target acquired. It's great. And I don't really want to melee this, so I'm going to shoot him. So I didn't play my Plague Bearer because I don't want to go to melee with this. Excuse me. More than I am already, because I'm going to have to melee on defense. Another thing you want to be careful of is if you don't have a good attack, especially if your opponents are poisoned, ready. You do want to be careful to ready more and play patiently with, especially with a warlord like Gloggothrox, where you kind of play the long game. One of the only times you want to attack, even if it's unfavored, is if you're actually going to take out an opposing card. Or if it's something like that, where over time it's just going to get more durable. So I wanted to go ahead and poison that. He's got 2 stacks on you, he's not hitting very hard, and they've got a melee debuff, nice. And now here I've got all my biggest damage dealers on the board at once, but 2 of them are pretty close to dead. So they have kind of the same utility where I'm kind of feeding them and expecting them to die that they would have if they're kind of my cheaper cards. And with this one in particular, I wanted him to go ahead and get that kill before he then triggers a debuff on the following card. Ooh, but one thing you need to remember is that if the card itself doesn't actually do the kill, like that case, where it's the Warlord ability that did the kill, the debuff won't actually be applied. One thing I've never tested is if it would apply to Artemis himself if he was on the board, but I don't think it does. The only case where a Warlord's ability triggers like that is, I think, going to be Warspeaky, the guy that cancels out Warlord traits. That's the only one that can impact a Warlord and then also impact a global ability. So he's still got 3 cards in there, yikes. Okay, now it's going to be the last 2 bodyguards and then Artemis himself. That's going to hurt. It's been a lot of kind of medium cost... Whoa, okay, there it is. I was going to say, it's been a lot of kind of medium cost cards, so I'm expecting the final card to be something a little bit scary, and it is. And that's challenging, because that guy, Berserk, can counteract Gloggothrox's ability. And I mean, I say can, I mean, it absolutely does. Unless you're feeding that card endless cards and things that'll give it the debuff faster than it's gaining damage. Which is the case of what's going on right here. I hope that doesn't kill him. No, okay, good. That's going to be my turn. Nuts. Now this is kind of tricky, so I want to... Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So here's the thing. So I could hit him really hard in melee, almost kill him, and then clear up this right flank. But I'm going to wait, because he's probably going to shoot me. The good news there is this guy still will have enough range damage to take that guy out. See how much damage is he dealing. Okay, nice. So we did a good job of feeding Ragnar some ablative cards faster than it dealt damage to him, which is one of the reasons I was readying. So he really has not gained a lot from Berserk, and he's taken some significant debuffs here. Now I've got an easy finish. Okay. Now that game ended up not being that close, but there are a couple times in there where I could have made attack mistakes or where the ready was absolutely the right choice. You don't always know that for sure until you know what else is in the deck. On some turns it can be better to pull something out sooner than later, but those I think were some very well-timed readies. Alright, so then they're at the top. So I haven't played Eldari, so we'll go ahead and play some Eldari. One deck that's been particularly fun this season has been Rakarth. And now the sort of traditional really scary Rakarth deck is going to be your heavy Psychers. I wanted to use my heavy melee cards and really focus on being Dark Eldar. So it's not just... so it's not kind of a weird mishmash. One of the things I love about Lorehammer is how fluffy and lore-based it can be, so I really like playing decks that have like a very heavy lore basis. So that's another reason I like that Glogothrok's deck, is it's very Nurgly. It's got a lot of poison, got a lot of Nurglings, a lot of stuff that feels very Nurgly, and has most of the cards that just seem happy. Which is a little weird, but that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. And now Rakarth, of course, anytime a card gets a kill, that gives anytime any card dies on either team, every card he has in the deck or on the board gets a flat +7 to its health. So a couple things that really help it are very durable cards that hit really, really hard that you can play early, because they will then have good staying power and do actually some work on the opposing deck, but then also help kind of stack up the health for the cards that haven't been deployed yet. So the Incarn is just an incredible piece. And then all these guys do pretty well. Let's see if I have something that hits hard enough. Oh yeah, okay. Because you want to actually get kills, especially against Anva, because every time you hit a card in Anva deck, it gets if it already has that attack stat, it gets better attack. So if I hit these guys in melee and don't kill them, they hit back harder every time. Likewise with ranged, and then psychic, except the Tau have no psychic. And so here I'm going to go ahead and melee. I will charge up that guy in the middle, but I'll kill the guys on the left and right. So I will end up giving myself a bunch of health with no repercussions on those guys. And this guy won't die either. So yeah, so the key behind this deck is you pull out the Incarn early, get some kills, build up some health, so you have a weakened opposing deck, and then all of your cards come in with really, really high health. I've got a couple weak poison cards in there to kind of break down shields and help sort of clear things through. But the key to it all is going to be your Incarn, because this thing is absolutely an incredible piece. And here's exactly where you don't want to be. So the reason I like the Incarn so much is because he hits really hard. So he's a card that can actually... Because one of the things that can happen in an Urian deck is you can take so long to kill opposing cards that your healing doesn't matter. So they either still have the resources to answer you, or you're just not... you're not building up that health over time faster than you're losing cards. And so that's why a card like the Incarn is so good, because it hits really hard, and that lets you actually build up that health while also making progress. So Rakarth is a very patient, slow warlord and deck, but you still need to be fairly aggressive to get the most out of his ability. And why those Psychic decks do so well is they don't take damage back, and Eldar Psykers are incredibly powerful but very, very fragile. So the last thing you want is, and that's why Urian does really well, because he gets the same damage that other decks do, but ends up also keeping your Psykers alive for longer. Now, I don't necessarily love that strategy, though, because his abilities don't synergize with Psykers. And then also, even though one of the things about that is you're taking an ability that keeps your cards alive longer and then taking the weakest possible cards you can that will benefit from that ability the least. And so it feels like a weird combo. So I opted for the melee kind of beefy one because these cards all benefit from the most. I've got Fear, I've got Regen, I've got high health cards that have Berserk, cards that really love staying alive just a little bit longer and really, really combo well with his ability. It may not be as competitive as kind of the typical Psychic deck, but it feels kind of more in theme with what he's supposed to do and has been really effective for me, where I've kind of struggled at times when I've done those heavy Psyker decks. 82, nice. Speaking of Psyker decks, we're going to go ahead and roll out Eldrad, which is a high-risk play. We'll try it. Why not? Because Eldrad is the character that got me into Eldar in the first place. I really like his background and his lore, and it's just gotten cooler with him being this rebel running around doing the right thing, even while kind of the other craft holders are kind of dragging their feet a bit. So I've got him with Yvrain for those fluff reasons. But yeah. And the reason I say this is high risk is Eldrad hits incredibly hard, but the Psychic cards are very high cost for their hit points, so they're very fragile, and there's nothing in this that adds any additional staying power. And I've got a couple very expensive cards, so they need to hit hard to really make this worth it. And I've got a pretty fast deck, so that helps them strike first, so it helps me kind of build some momentum. And so I want to kill that fast, and it's got a lot of hit points, so we're going to go ahead and drop him in there. One of the biggest advantages, of course, and I'm going first, so we're going to go ahead and do this. One of the biggest advantages, of course, to having a so-called skinny deck or not filling it with bodyguards is that you then have more control of your drops when your cards are played. Since you can only ever see 3 of your bodyguards at a time, the fewer bodyguards you have, the more consistent your options are going to be. Oh, yeah. And the more kind of control you have when you play what, where. So that's why I've got kind of a smaller Psyker deck, because you can fill it, but then you end up with a lot more randomness in what ends up being played. Interesting. He didn't do melee, which means I was going to hit him back in melee harder than he was going to hit me. I'm rated a little bit higher, so the AI, the matchmaking system, expects me to win this one, and I think I should relatively easily. Just to kind of talk through it, not a lot of people play Eldrad or see him. His ability is every Psyker on the board, whenever it does a Psychic attack, each subsequent Psychic attack gets plus 30% Psychic damage for each card that's already attacked. It's a lot of words, but the way that works is, well, we'll show this in a second. So we got this guy. Oof, man, I'm probably not going to kill that guy. He's got a lot of hit points. So this guy's going to do an area effect Psychic, which what's awesome about that is it does flat damage to all opponents on the board, and then also this guy's attack will have plus 30 because he's already got the bonus from that. Since he and this guy have also attacked, then Yvrain will get a 60% bonus to attack, and then since all 3 have attacked, the guy on the far right here is going to get plus 90% to Psychic damage, so it's almost double. And that stacks up and adds up real quick, especially to cards that already have high Psychic damage and also under Inspire or Brotherhood of Psykers. So this will end up not being close, even if he does a lot of damage to me, which he does. Even if he wipes me here, I still have Eldrad, and Eldrad does so much damage. And he didn't wipe me, so he is dead. Yeah, so I'll drop this guy in here. Eldrad should one-shot the Skull Taker. And that's the thing about it. He does so much damage. It's a really glassy deck, so it's pretty close. One turn, one more bad matchup. If he'd had one shield on that side, I really could have been toast. But so I'm already hitting at plus 30%, and Eldrad's going to hit for like almost 300 damage. It's just insane. He's so punchy, and he's got decent hit points now. They're not great. They're not kind of best in class, but they're still good. So he's a really powerful card, but he He's more fragile than most other Eldar warlords, and the decks themselves are much more fragile as well. He's really the definition of a glass cannon, even more than Ahriman in Chaos, because Ahriman is a little bit glassy, but he also has he's less glass, less cannon, whereas Eldrad is more glass, more cannon. Okay, this is a interesting matchup. So this is a bad matchup because that's Urian, so he's a really sustained deck that will get tougher over time. Oh, and he's playing the Psychic one. But it's a really good matchup because the cannon aspect of Eldrad decks give me exactly what I need to take this down. Like I was saying, you want to hit them. When you're playing as Urian, you want to lose cards more slowly than you are getting kills. And in this just fed it to me. So not only is there only one Psyker on the board, but it's my turn first. And I'm just going to wipe these guys. I might not wipe that middle guy. Yeah, I did. One challenge of these decks is doing the math. So just like Big Game Hunter doesn't actually show you the final damage you're actually going to deal, because I don't know how they would display that, because... Oh, that's a bummer. Because it is target dependent rather than attacker dependent. So Eldrad's bonus to Psychic, Big Game Hunter, and then Zimat Haya, the Tyranid Warlords approach to... Those are the only cards where you can't tell what damage you're actually going to deal until you've actually done the attack. So you kind of have to do the mental math or just hope. But yeah, this was a perfect example of a great matchup. I'm also higher level than that, so this is not a particularly challenging match. But that, you saw exactly what you don't want in a Rakarth deck is an opponent that just does a ton of damage and burns down your cards before they can kind of heal up. Because gaining 7 health per death is good, but it's slow. It builds up over time. So the more cards that die, the longer a card is not dying, the more health it racks up. Whereas if things are dying quickly, they don't have time to build that up over time. And that's how you beat Urian. But this Eldrad deck is a perfect example of one that will burn his cards down real quick. And so I think, yeah, fairly comfortably I've got this. And Eldrad is going to one-shot that guy. Bloop. And I still have some cards in the deck. So, easy one. And then we will switch to Lilith, and then we may play another Chaos deck just to do it. But first I'm going to one-shot Urian Rakarth, which is very satisfying. If you've ever played a game where you struggled to take down a Warlord because you just can't deal damage in that central target, try a little Eldrad, mix it up a bit. He's, again, a really high-risk Warlord to play because of the fragility of the deck and the things that can counter it. If you go up against a Akaran deck, a heavy Psychic one, that can really ruin your day real quick. But, okay. So we're going to play Lilith at least once. Ooh, got 239, not bad. We're going to play Lilith just to show her off. She's probably going to be my endgame Warlord because she's just so incredibly good. And just to kind of recap this, I've got a really heavy shooting Lilith deck because I was struggling with the mixed decks of just having so many rounds where the majority of my cards weren't doing damage. And that's the thing, where usually this is a flying circus where you have some Psychic, you've got some shields, you've got some melee, you've got some ranged, all cards that do attack on the drop. But where I was struggling is in a lot of matchups, I would have a melee card that would attack on the drop and a ranged card that would attack on the drop. And they just weren't doing consistent enough damage to push through, and I was just running out of steam. So the all-ranged deck that I've been running has a ton of synergy. It's a smaller deck. It is a... Ooh, how are we going to do this? The reason I'm delaying there is that the area effect damage... Well, it's fine. Just do this. So again, Lilith, every time she gets a kill, the card that got the kill returns to your hand. Actually, I think it returns to your deck, so you don't always guarantee that you can play that next. But what I was looking at is trying to figure out a way that I could really cheese out the overflow ability with this guy here. And of course we hit a ranged Akaran deck. That's a bummer. And he got really heavy. How did he get that much? Wow, that's crazy. He got a huge range damage bonus. That's going to be really unfortunate. So that may actually make this a much tougher matchup. I don't know if I've ever seen a really heavy ranged attack Akaran deck. Alright, now we're getting a little bit risky here. And so this is still kind of a glassy deck, and this was a really bad matchup because Akaran has those secondary lives, which is exactly what Lilith does not want to see. But this should still work out. And here again, these are exactly the decks I was running into and having trouble beating because they just have so much staying power. They're just so difficult to take down that even Lilith wasn't able to pull it off. And interesting. Now I have a good plan to finish this off, and we'll see if it works. It relies on taking a bunch of losses here, which I did not take enough losses. So here is my plan. The goal so has this guy, he hasn't died yet, okay. Yeah. So the goal was, go ahead and do that actually, because that guy doesn't have enough range to kill me off. Cool, okay. The goal is to have his splash kill this guy so that I can then, yeah, okay. So that I can double shoot him and then get that guy there. Perfect, okay. Still very, very risky because, okay, how hard does he hit? He hits for 134, he's got 146 still alive. Wow, okay. Oh, this is cutting it close. And watch him not even shoot me here. This is extremely tricky, so let's see what he does. He does melee. Okay, good. Ooh, you bugger. So here's what I need to do. So my Crimson Hunter needs to hit harder than 167, which it should, which that will mean that my Barrage card over here is able to get the finishing blow. Sweet. Okay. So I made that. Now this is still extremely risky. He's still sitting on one shield. No shield. Sweet. Okay. Whew. Whew. Okay, so this is the competitive game I was hoping for. I'm at 2.9k and he's at 2.2k. But that was an unexpectedly tough matchup. Like I was saying, I've literally never seen a ranged Akaran deck, and that's exactly what this deck did not want to see, just because of the worst possible combination where it's hitting me in my primary attack type, and it has the second life because of Akaran. That was, whew, man, that was a close game. Proud of that one. That was a good one. But that game actually was a perfect example of why I changed my Lilith deck. Now if I had the mixed attack types deck, so if I had I had some shields, I had some melee in there, I would have been more flexible with Lilith, but I don't think I would have made the same progress killing opposing bodyguards. So I don't think I would have actually won the game with the kind of standard deck. I would have run out of steam by the end there, especially against Akaran himself. Because I had one dedicated attack type that was hitting really, really hard, I was able to kind of tease that out and use that disadvantage to still pull out the victory. So that was just a perfect example of exactly why I rebuilt this deck the way I have. And also because it's got really high very, very fast cards. I looked for cards that made sense at points wise and attack type wise, but then also had really high initiative so that I have the best chance to attack first, which does matter in a Lilith deck. Not as much as it does in some other decks, but it certainly it makes a difference. And this guy's probably going to hit me in melee. I'm going to probably do some psychic rounds. Okay. This is a good matchup because it's a melee heavy deck, and so this again would have been a bad matchup for the usual Flying Circus mixed Lilith deck, because I would still have had the ranged attacks, but not to the same degree that I have. What was I saying? So, because I would still have had my ranged attacks to kind of mix it up, and then my melees to counterattack, but I still have a decent number of. Ooh, man, that's getting pretty scary. I still have a decent number of melee attacks to fall back on, and I'm hitting so hard in range that I'm hitting this thing exactly the ways it does not want to be hit. And now this is still going to be challenging. Let's see. So it's his turn. This is still going to be challenging because I do still have an avatar staring me down. Nice. And with poison, so he's going to hit me. I will survive, and then on my follow-up turn, I'm going to make an utter mess of his cards. Perfect. Okay. And this is where it's going to get a little bit weird. And that may have... yeah, okay. No, that was still the right call. So I'm going to kill this. And that may cost me my Crimson Hunter, but that... well, no, it won't actually. Well, nope, Inspire. Ooh, nuts. It shouldn't kill my Crimson Hunter. Well, it's got the extra 5%. It did. That's a bummer. Oh boy, that's going to make this a lot more challenging. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I think you got me, Avatar. We'll see. So we got him. Oh, wow. Okay. Dang. Alright, do I do 200 damage? I do not. Do I do 200 damage? No. Okay, so he got me. Yeah. So one of the things I'm missing is my Sorrow over here. Shot me to death. That was just mean. Yeah, that... ooh, man. And I probably misplayed that. I'm thinking of kind of some of my deployments. There was a middle there where I probably should have gone for a kill to pull a card back into my hand. And also I sacrificed my cheap cards pretty early. But let's try that again. It's been really interesting the last couple seasons because the change to do double traits really changed the dynamic of some of these balances. So that matchup before... so looking back on that deck, so the cards that had double traits, so you had the Solitaire, the Avatar itself, both had secondary traits, and so did several other cards in there. But even those two by themselves, so it was Jane Czar, the Solitaire, and the Avatar, each got an extra attack that they normally wouldn't have, and there was an extra ready from from the Karandras, the Scorpion guy. So that was a lot of extra damage that wouldn't have happened in previous matches because those cards only had single traits and now they have secondary traits. So that makes a giant difference in how the meta works out and makes things quite a bit more challenging. One thing that didn't go well there earlier is I played Mogan Ra badly. And Mogan Ra is a mainstay, oh god, is a mainstay of those decks, of these Lilith decks, just because he's really mobile and has a great ability, but he also has very low hit points, which makes him very vulnerable. Alright, how's this going to go? Who is that last card going to be? That makes him very vulnerable relative to some of the other ones. Wow, this is an obnoxious deck. Okay. Whoa. This is another one I've never actually seen before. It's very, very dense. Only a couple warlords, or only a couple bodyguards, but they really combo well with Voldus's ability, and they are extremely durable. Okay, buddy. Yeah, he's got me. Wow, I have... what did I just fight? I think these are higher level than me. Yes, they're very high level. Wow, right, yeah, rank 4 traits. And I said in some of my earlier reviews that there are a couple cards that if I see them across the table, I expect to lose. And one of the key ones is Mephiston. If I see Mephiston on the board, I fully expect to lose that. Game. And that continues to be true. And you don't even want to kill him because of that death blow. So I'm going to outflank him again, hit him real hard, And I think that Lilith actually will have enough melee damage to pull this out, so I think I might have actually pulled this off. But we'll find out. Alright, Lilith, show me what you got. Oh yeah, she sure does. Okay. And I recently leveled her up to the point where she has the extra melee damage she does now, so that, oof, man, that was close. That's another thing, too, about the mixed deck, is you end up with Lilith on the board with no melee bonus. Where if you are cheesing those outflanks and readies and leaning really heavily on your ranged attacks, then she can actually finish the game more effectively than the usual flying circus, just because she has the melee buff to attack with. And it builds up quite a bit, and so having a melee buff, even a little bit beyond her outflank, just won me that game. Wow, so these have been interesting. I'm going to do one more Lilith, because these have been wild. I'm still a little bit thrown by that deck. That deck was scary. And had that been played reversed, where the filler card was played last, that would have been quite terrifying. Because you saw that the AI, of course, played the two cheapest cards first, whereas it should have played one of the heavy psychers. Like, you start with Mephiston in that deck, and then drop Tigurius, and then drop the Medicae, and then you follow up with the Inspire guy last. So yeah, that was fairly lucky. And an Eldred deck that starts with those two. Okay. I'm getting weird. And a lot of these decks are actually very scary, even though they're hitting me at kind of like not terribly competitive points. So this is a 2.2k deck. This still causes some problems. I'm going to go ahead and hit him in melee, which doesn't feel good, but I want to poison that Shadow Seer. Yeah, Shadow Seer. Doesn't do a ton of damage to any of my cards except the squishy ones. We'll see if I can finish this guy off and pull out some of these psychers. One of the things you may have noticed about my Eldred deck is it's only psychers, and I built that because a lot of psychers have Brotherhood of Psychers, where they are only at their best when they have a board full of psychers. And if you start sprinkling in non-psychic cards, it dilutes that a lot, and then it's not even really worth taking those cards. So that's kind of... The Eldred deck is meant to be a glass cannon. It's meant to be played like that. That's the way it works. So if you start taking that away, it doesn't necessarily make the deck more powerful. So like these guys, now this works as Brotherhood of Psychers because I took all of my non-psychers off the board because I was dumb. Or I cleared them out in a fairly aggressive way. Oh, so close. But yeah, so that's going to hurt, but not as much as it easily could have. Whew. Excuse me, it's getting pretty late here. I'm probably going to wrap it after this game. But yeah, we'll go ahead and see where this goes. One thing I was trying to say earlier is that my Sorrow of Amenronth, my Fire Prism, is pretty low level. He's only got, I think, rank 2 Barrage, and he doesn't have anywhere near the maximum ranged attack damage. Once I get those, that card is going to be infinitely more powerful. And that's a big limitation in this deck, as is right now. So right now he does 100 damage and has rank 2 Barrage. But, and also his hit points actually have quite a way to go up too. So there have been more than a couple turns in the games I've played where he would have really kind of saved the game if he were a little bit higher level. Oh god, okay. So I want to play this guy to take that down. Oh man, I don't know if I can save you, dude. Oh, do I want to lose both of them? No, I do not. Let's take a look at these. Yeah, those are high level. So those do enough damage that there's nothing I could play that they won't kill. Yeah, maybe the Sorrow survives this hit. And the chances are better because, oh my god, they both did. Whoa, okay. And so, and looking at those hit points, this guy was 100% saved because I played Mogan Ra, and he was able, with his precision shot, to take down the third Psyker. Because that weakened both of these guys. So if they had the third Psyker on the board, they would have comfortably killed this guy. Probably still not killed the Sorrow, but gone pretty close. And if that was rank 4, or if this Inspire was rank 3, like that, that was real close. And I got lucky just based on card level. Oof. I probably still could have pulled out that game, but that was a close finish there. There's that glass and cannon kind of running up against each other. That's one of the few Eldred decks I've played against. You really don't see them very often, and if you do, they're generally very, very high level. Yeah, so there we go. We got decently high up here. We're at rank 232. You need to be under 100 to really get in kind of the fully upper reward section. Let's see where we are. I think that puts me in top 10% maybe? Nope. Wow, top 25. Oof, man. Okay, and that will stretch out a bit as the season goes on. You get more people in Terra. That widens these percentages quite a bit. But you usually expect not to be in the top 6% or even 10% unless you're in like the kind of 1300s trophy count by the end of the season. So I've got a little ways to go, and I'll probably still play a little bit into next week. Just to play, just to get my kill packs and such, because I'm probably not going to push for top 6% this season because I don't care about this guy. He's fine. I don't care. Feels kind of a weird slot in terms of stats and points, so I don't know. Is he good? I don't know. I don't think so. So we're just going to give that a pass. He's also a Space Marine, so I don't care that much. So we're not going to hit it too hard, but I am going to play some more. But yeah, hopefully those games were informative. Hopefully that was kind of fun to watch. Some of the other decks that I didn't necessarily play, I have been doing fairly well with my Zephyrblade deck, and I did a bit of a rewind here. I've seen some folks on the Reddit talk about how Zephyrblades' ability just becomes a wash in later levels, which is kind of true. There's ups and downs to that. So his ability is really good early on when your cards have very low attack stats. The plus 3% to range damage adds up, and you can really feel it. Mid-game, it doesn't matter as much just because your games are going to be closer and they're going to be faster kind of before that plus attack damage is going to trigger. It doesn't really matter. But then later, as your cards get higher level, the ability doesn't matter as much, but the abilities of the cards you play does. The level of the cards you play does, and the fact that Zephyrblade is the cheapest of the warlords makes a huge, huge difference. Also, it gets to be that point where suddenly your games are close, and we're having an extra like 6 to 12 damage on a couple shots through the game can really swing it. And so I would not discount Zephyrblades' ability, still very powerful. I built this deck to lean on the Barrage from the Amonroth, and then also to use the Karhadron, the Wraith Fighter, because mine is finally high enough level to really, really contribute. Takes a while to get there. He was here for a long time, which is just not useful at the price point. But then I got lucky with some drops and got him up to here, and this is where it really becomes a valuable piece. We've got that rank 3 Psionic Blast, and he's also got a really decent base range damage. That was really key. And gets his hit points up to the point where he's a little bit more durable. Clearly, again, on a couple more levels, and he becomes truly terrifying. So this Zephyrblade deck is one I'm kind of shelving for now. I just talked about how my Sorrow of Amonroth is a little bit low level, and you're going to feel that. At least that rank 3 Barrage will make a difference, the extra hit points will make a difference, and then certainly when I get to that max, that just hair more range damage and hit points, that's really going to make a difference in this deck and in my Lilith deck. So he's one certainly that I keep in there. Let's see, who else? I was kind of talking about the other warlords and the factions I play. I've talked about Ahriman before. With the secondary traits, he has just gotten so much scarier. He's just a much, much more intense and more powerful piece than he was. Secondary traits added to the chicken, and then also to himself really makes a difference. And then there are a couple other cards in there. The legendary Slaneshi cards, if you can stack them in a deck with him, really adds up real quick. And also this guy, you get to a decent level of regen on him, and he's just incredibly hard to shift. And especially having the psychic buff and then being technically a psyker with his keyword. Huge. Huge. So new cards, new stats. Ahriman is in a really good spot right now. Skulltaker is struggling. Some of the new cards we just got from that Khorne campaign actually really helped. I don't know if anyone really noticed, but the new Deathblow card. The really cheap Deathblow Cultist is actually a really good piece. If you get a decent level of this guy, he's an incredible value for the points. For the points for that level of melee damage plus Deathblow, I mean, you get him at mid-level here. That's a real scary piece. And definitely worth considering in your Skull Taker decks, and will certainly make a difference. And there were a couple other cards that I didn't get because I didn't buy the pack and get enough drops. So keep an eye out for those. Skull Taker's got some potential to come back. And we'll leave it at that. Well, you saw me lose to the Avatar. The Avatar also has benefited hugely, and the deck we saw didn't have that many additional traits. I think mine has more. It doesn't. Okay, but all these cards really, really benefit from those secondary traits. So having 2 traits at heroic and epic level is bonkers. Really good. Very powerful piece. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Appreciate the time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time.